Is It Phoenix strategy, Zan metagaming a little bit, which is what we often see Zan do. He's kind of an innovator, likes to mess around with the new decks. He's playing War Prison. This is one of those decks that people are championing to be a deck that could maybe dethrone Is It Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think that War Prison is an atrocious matchup for Is It Phoenix. I personally get ravaged by it pretty regularly on Magic Online. So far, to the extent that I decided to start playing 2 copies of Shatterstorm in my sideboard. And Allison Warfield decided to come with 1 copy. Foolish.
One can do it, though, but Zan is going to cast nearly his entire hand on the first turn here. Warfield just had a Scalding Tarn. Zan has Darkslick Shores, Mishra's Bauble, Welding Jar, Mox Opal, Tormod's Crypt, and a Pithing Needle. Warfield will wisely respond by sacrificing the Scalding Tarn. Don't want to get Stone Rained by that one.
Yeah, and there aren't a whole lot of hits for Pithing Needle in this matchup. It's basically just, Terramander and fetch lands. Everything else is an instant sorcery or creature.
Yeah, and you see Zan just name Scalding Tarn.
Yeah, I mean, there are still 3 left in the deck. There's a chance Warfield kept double Scalding Tarn in the opener, and it might function as a Stone Rain. Now, the Phoenix decks are pretty good at getting rid of dead cards, though, thanks to Faithless Looting, but you never want to see that in the opening turns. Now, the big story here, though, is that Zan played, 5, 6 permanents on the first turn of the game? Now, these permanents are fairly innocuous, right? They're all kind of 0s or 1s that don't have a huge impact. One of those is Mox Opal hanging out. Another is a Welding Jar, which can protect. But Tormod's Crypt in the main deck here is a tutor target for War of Invention. It's going to be pretty good at stifling any potential Arclight Phoenix draws that Allison Warfield may have.
Yeah, it can be potent. You saw there in the upkeep, Zan went ahead and used the Mishra's Bauble to look at the top card of Warfield's deck. It was an Arclight Phoenix. Both players know about that. Just a Steam Vents for Warm. We go back Syed's way. Remember to draw off his Bauble, put a die on his deck because he gets to draw the card on his turn when you use it on your opponent's turn.
Right. Now, one of the biggest innovations to this War Prison deck is a way to close the game quickly, and that's Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek. It's also a 2-card combo, which works well with War of Invention, and can really just win games by itself. You don't need to find the Ensnaring Bridge. You don't need to find all those protective artifacts. You can just cast Thopter Foundry, sometimes on turn 1 with a Mox Opal and a couple of 0s, and then turn 2, cast Sword of the Meek and just start making a bunch of 1/1s. For every mana you have, just make a 1/1, wouldn't gain a life. It's really tough for a deck like Is It Phoenix to beat just with that 2-card combo alone.
Speaking of that 2-card combo, here's the play, Sword of the Meek. So far for Warfield, it's just been 3 lands. Syed has missed his second land drop until now. There's Talaria West entering tap there. So next turn, he'll be untapping, be able to make at least 3 Thopter tokens.
Yeah, so in this scenario, I'm pretty sure Warfield expected Zan to be on Bant Spirits or Infect, 2 decks that he is more known for playing, and her hand is likely full of things like Lightning Axe, Gut Shot, Lightning Bolt. It is not common that you see this Is It Phoenix deck not play a spell in the first 3 turns. So her hand very reactive and not the right type of interaction for this matchup, and maybe Zan's, switch to this kind of metagame deck is going to pay off dividends.
Yeah, it's just the turn 4 play was the first play, as you mentioned, for Warfield. It was just Arclight Phoenix that knocked Zan to 17, but that's not going to last. Now is untapped with 3 mana sources, has that Sword of the Meek Thopter Foundry combo online.
Now, Warfield actually has a Surgical Extraction in hand, and if Zan taps all of his mana to eat that Phoenix and bring back the Sword of the Meek, there's a chance that while he's tapped out, Allison actually gets to catch it with that Surgical Extraction.
So here's an attack from Warfield. You're going to see Syed go to work with this combo. The way this works, Thopter Foundry, for 1 mana, you can sacrifice an artifact you control, gain a life, make a 1/1 flying Thopter token. You sacrifice Sword of the Meek. Sword of the Meek has a text box that matters in your graveyard. When a 1/1 creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can return Sword of the Meek as an equipment attached to that creature. It gives the creature +1/+2, so you kind of go with 1, 2, 3 Thopter, and you keep going, keep sacrificing, bringing back the sword, gain a life, make a Thopter for that. And you saw Syed, he's playing around Surgical Extraction, didn't even make a second Thopter.
He's playing around double Surgical Extraction is what he's doing, and I think that is really smart because he knows that the longer the game goes, as long as he doesn't get hit by a Surgical Extraction, it's going to be insanely hard for Allison to beat the Thopter Foundry Sword of the Meek combo. So Zan's just going to try to naturally draw a few more mana sources, and then he's just going to hold up 2 mana every single turn while making a 1/1 flyer with the rest of his mana each time.
Here's a thing in the ice for Warfield, and you might think that could be bad for Syed because, you get to bounce all the tokens or whatever, but because this combination just works at instant speed, you can let the thing in the ice transform, just make another Thopter, block it. He's very well insulated, really against any kind of creature strategy from here out.
Yeah, and I mean, and Zan is such a heads-up player that he realizes that the longer this game goes, the more likely it is he's going to be able to win. Not only can he just slow play this Thopter Sword combo and just always make sure he plays around double surgical, but he can also just at some point cast an Ensnaring Bridge, empty his hand, and then the Izzet Phoenix deck has to win via burn spells, and with just a bunch of lightning bolts and a few gut shots, it's not enough damage to punch through, especially if he's able to insulate his life total here with that Thopter Foundry over the next few turns.
Warfield's going to cast a couple Seer Visions here, thing in the ice now down to 2 counters, trying to find some way out of this powerful combination. Syed has gotten a little bit aggressive here. You saw that Thopter chunked in for 2 damage, Warfield the 17 here. And once you start making a bunch of Thopters, for now he's playing around Surgical Extraction, that makes sense. But it doesn't actually take that long for this combo to close.
Oh, right. And, once Allison's shields are down, like let's say that at some point there's a fight over double Surgical Extraction, then Zan can just start using all of his mana each turn and not really be limited to holding up 2. And he doesn't even really need to hold up 2. The odds of Allison having 2 Surgical Extraction in the top, 15 or so cards is pretty low. But understanding that the only way you can lose is if you get hit with a double Surgical Extraction is just such a heads-up play from someone who is perhaps new to this archetype.
So that was a Manamorphose for Warfield, and then a Thought Scour that'll transform the thing in the ice. The Horror has been awoken, still red mana floating, and here's a Faithless Looting. There's already 1 Arclight Phoenix in the graveyard. That's the one that earlier traded with the Thopter token. Discard a Gut Shot and Scalding Tarn. Scalding Tarn, of course, turned off by Pithing Needle. And Syed is just going to go ahead and use the Tormod script. Don't need to face down that Arclight Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, that's... there's a chance he gets overwhelmed, and it's going to be unlikely that Tormod's Crypt gets that much more value in that scenario. One thing to note, Zan actually had the ability to Tormod's Crypt himself, I believe, which he could have used that to protect himself from Surgical Extraction. I didn't even think about that.
So here's an attack from Awoken Horror. Syed will go ahead and make a Thopter, block that one. Make 1 more Thopter, still leaving up 2 mana every turn here. Just going up in life total despite this aggression.
Yeah, I mean, he's able to take care of the Arclight Phoenix. He got rid of a couple of potential flashbacks on Faithless Looting, and he's able to effectively chump block this Awoken Horror till the end of time.
So Syed went up to 21 in his turn. He'll shock for a Watery Grave down to 19. The mana is actually just going to give that life back.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, it gives 1 back this turn, and then it breaks even by next turn. So just gets to make an extra Thopter, perhaps able to close the game a turn sooner, making that extra 1/1.
And there's an attack with the 2/3 Thopter, Warfield to 15. On Warfield's side, here's an attack with the Woken Horror. Syed's going to go ahead and make another Thopter, go to 20, put the Thopter in front of the Horror. We'll see how long Warfield wants to wait this out.
Yeah, I mean, there's very little reason to concede here, right? The onus is on the War Prison deck to actually win the game. And if Allison, in a bad matchup, ultimately ends up with a draw by the end of the match, that's actually going to, in my book, that's a win for her and her side of this matchup, because it is pretty heinous for the most part. The card Ensnaring Bridge is really tough to beat, especially in Game 1. And then in Games 2 and 3, you have your 1 copy of Shatterstorm that you can draw to, and they don't really play a whole lot of ways to interact with that Shatterstorm. Not a lot of discard, anything like that, not a lot of counter spells. And if you eventually draw it, and you've accrued a battlefield featuring a bunch of Woken Horrors and Terramanders and such, you can just cast that Shatterstorm, clear everything. Welding Jar doesn't work because of the Can't Be Regenerated clause, and then attack for the win. So the 1 Shatterstorm is a good sideboard card, but aside from that, it's not a great matchup. So just play it out. Force him to kill you.
Game 1 certainly very tough. You see Warfield as a second thing in the ice here, deployed a Terramander as well. Syed made some Thopters, once again attacks with the 2/3, leaving 2 1/1s back here against Warfield's potential attacks. So she'll want to transform the Awoken Horror before she can even maybe clear this. You see she's casting a couple ops here. It's down, thinking the ice down to 2 counters. But again, Syed just at the ready, 4 mana untapped. Can make plenty of Thopters here.
Yeah, and as long as Zan has like 2 for chump blocking purposes, the 7 power things in the ice are not going to be much of a problem.
Woken Horror attacks, Thopter blocks. Go to Warfield's end step. Syed will make 2 Thopter tokens, go up to 24. Getting some mileage out of those Nick Miller Thopter tokens.
He picked a good one. I'll tell him that much.
I like the goggles on that art. That's a really nice touch.
He's a steampunk.
Yeah. That's what I think of when I think of Nick Miller.
What, that he's a punk?
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. Attack for 5 here from Syed.
You hear that, Nick Miller? I called you a punk, boy.
And here is Ensnaring Bridge. That's going to make it real tough for Warfield to attack, as if it wasn't already hard enough.
Right. Now the slew of 1/1s coming across each turn. Also, Warfield's already down to 8. Can't imagine that she's going to be playing this game out that much longer. She does have 1 more reset on the tokens with that thing in the ice, but with no way to get Ensnaring Bridge off the battlefield in the main deck. The only way she can really deal damage is if Zan just doesn't cast anything or play any lands. So it's a pretty dire circumstance here for Warfield.
And here's an important element of this matchup. Doesn't really matter in this game. You see Warfield's going to pack it in. She's seen enough. Syed's going to go up a game here. Thing in the Ice is technically a 0-power creature, which some 0-power creatures, Noble Hierarch, for example, can interact favorably with Ensnaring Bridge. Thing in the Ice can't. It has Defender.
Right, and you can't attack with the 0-4 and then transform it to get in that 7-point swing. So, yeah, that is a great point there. But these players here know what they're doing, very experienced in the modern format. Let's take a look at their sideboards and figure out what they're going to do.
Yeah, so you mentioned for Warfield side, the big find's going to be Shatterstorm. We'll see if she has anything else of interest. 2 Dispel, 2 Pyromancer Ascension, 2 Blood Moon, 2 Abrade, a Beacon Bolt, a Chandra Torch of Defiance, an Anger of the Gods, a Surgical Extraction, a Flame Slash, and a Spell Pierce along that 1 Shatterstorm.
So there's quite a few cards that can come in here. Shatterstorm, obviously just the Nutter Butters. 1 copy of Spell Pierce is pretty good, counters most of those artifacts that Zan's going to be bringing in. 2 Dispel is okay. It could counter something out of the sideboard that could be annoying, but also it allows you to fight War of Invention, one of their best spells. Pyromancer Ascension allows Warfield to actually attack from a different angle, so I do like bringing in Pyromancer Ascension as a way to potentially win even through the face of an Ensnaring Bridge. Obviously, a Braid comes in. Blood Moon, I think, is like a coin flip. Almost all the cards in Zan's deck are colorless, but he does have a few blue cards and not a lot of basic lands. So Blood Moon could maybe steal a game, but he's able to empty his hand most of the time by like turn 3. And Blood Moon generally is less effective, if your opponent's able to empty their hand pretty early. Yeah. Chandra Torch of Defiance, another card that allows her to deal damage under a Ensnaring Bridge, and then Surgical Extraction as a way to potentially stop the combo of Sword of the Meek and Thopter Foundry.
Sure. And for Syed's side of things, we have 4 copies of Unmoored Ego. This is some technology that started to crop up. Partially anti-Shatterstorm tech there. 3 Psymaster Thopterus, 3 Tezzeret Agent of Bolas, some alternate win conditions there. A Chalice of the Void, a Battle at the Bridge, a Spellskite, a Swan Song, and a Torpor Orb. So
I don't have a ton of experience with the War Prison deck personally. I imagine that Zan played this deck specifically to beat Is It Phoenix, and I don't think it needs that much help. After sideboard, you already have a main deck Grafdigger's Cage and a Tormod's Crypt to stop Phoenix. You already have the Thopter Sword combo that's really tough for Thing in the Ice to punch through, Crackling Drake to punch through. So I'm not sure how many cards actually come in here. Like, for example, Psymaster Thopterus. I think it's really good against Is It Phoenix, but I don't know if it's worth bringing in because he already has a lot of other things that are already very good against them. Tezzeret Agent of Bolas, I think, is just a little too slow for the matchup, and I think there's just better options. But Chalice of the Void, as the one of, obviously, very strong. If naturally drawn, you can play it out in X = 1. It locks out, roughly 80% or 90% of the spells from that Is It Phoenix deck. Now, there's a chance that Unmoored Ego is specifically there to name Shatterstorm in this matchup, but also just an like Primeval Titan card in others matchups. So he might bring those in just to protect from Shadowstorm alone. But Allison Warfield's sideboard plane is actually fairly diverse in how it can attack through an Ensnaring Bridge or destroy an Ensnaring Bridge. Braids, Pyromancer Ascension, Challenger Torch of Defiance. These are all cards that can give her Altar Roost to victory as opposed to just having that one of Shadowstorm.
For those unawares, today is St. Patrick's Day.
Hey.
And on StarCityGames.com, we're going to have a St. Patrick's Day sale. Look at all those green cards.
Yep. Oh, no. I'm not wearing any green.
I wore a green tie.
Wow.
It's very festive.
Wow.
I'm an extremely
Prepared?
festive person.
I
learned it was St. Patrick's Day about Thursday of this week. It was coming up, which gave me enough time to pack.
I always thought St. Patrick's Day was on Monday.
I generally have no idea how any holiday really works.
Well, I know the ones that are always on the same day, but the ones that are like on the second Monday of March or whatever, I don't know, man. Why?
And so you see on sale here, you see Fastbond. There's, of course, the iconic art of St. Patrick driving the snakes out of Ireland.
No, isn't there like an Elvish Piper like dancing around with doing
There's been multiple homages to St. Patrick throughout the rich cultural history of Magic.
Yeah, just a slew of green cards going to be up for sale today, so make sure you go check out go.startsygames.com/sale, and you can check out the St. Patrick's Day sale.
Saw some pretty good tweets about St. Patrick's Day this weekend.
Oh yeah, what was the one about the person who was like waveboarding or whatever?
I don't know that one. I was going to go a different direction.
Okay.
Let's talk about Magic.
Yeah,
Let's
sure.
just do that.
I mean, that's fine. St. Patrick's Day is not a real holiday.
Ooh. Shots fired.
Ooh.
Warfield's underway here. Scalding Tarn at 19. Basic Island. Terramander is where she will start.
I just alienated an entire country. I apologize.
You opened the floodgates, man. Send your complaints to @strong_sad.
At geocities.l.
Zan will shock for Watergrave to 18. Mox Opal. Mishra's Bobble.
I don't think he's shocked. I think he just played tap.
Oh, yeah. These cost 0, huh?
They do.
He's at 20.
Terramander from Warfield. This is an okay start, applying a little pressure. Now we're going to see if she plays another creature like a Thing in the Ice or starts to play a bunch of instants and sorceries, potentially pump that Terramander.
Thing in the Ice it is. Terramander will knock Zan to 19. 19 all.
Now this is another matchup where those 3 copies of Pyromancer Ascension that Tarek Patel is playing in the main deck would come up big time. And the more that I think about Pyromancer Ascension in the main deck, the more I just love it, and I kind of just want to play 4 of it. I don't know.
Yeah, it has been pretty impressive from what I have seen on the floor and on coverage this weekend.
Right.
It's really good. The graveyard hit that people are playing, Surgical Extraction, for example, not very good against it.
Right. I mean, obviously, if you play against Dredge or Burning Inquiry decks where they're playing 4 Leyline of the Void in the sideboard, yeah, it's going to be pretty tough. Like when 2 of your 3 threats interact with only the graveyard, but it's not like Terramander is a nice one when you don't have a graveyard.
That's true. And here's an interesting one. Syed with Darkless Shores into Damping Sphere. That should slow any kind of cantrip chain down. You know for sure that Thing in the Ice wasn't going to transform. So it's just going to be a tap Steam Vents and another attack for 1 from Warfield. Syed to 18.
Yeah, the Damping Sphere is okay against Phoenix. It slows down Arclight Phoenix itself, but the rest of the deck can usually function at instant speed with the Lightning Bolts or Metamorphose, so it's not as good as it seems. If you're playing a kind of a slower ramp deck or something, Damping Sphere can buy you some time, but it's not really the way that I like to fight this matchup. But of course, the War Prison deck just kind of has 1 floating in the main deck to go get in specific matchups with War of Invention, and it just so happens to be an okay draw here.
Yeah, not worth boarding out anyway.
Right. There's plenty of other bad ones
there's
to board out.
Few options there. Inventor's Fair is a land return for Syed. Metalcraft is online. You see he's going to use Mox Opal as well. He's going to cast Thopter Foundry.
Yeah, Thopter Foundry is a nice one here. Zan, I think, playing around Spell Pierce. Just making if he has another play here, he might just not cast it. I'm not sure.
Also, he might not be able to cast it.
Right.
He's also under the Damping Sphere.
Damping Sphere, correct.
Yeah, so he'll pass back to Warfield. Thing in the Ice still hanging out with 4 counters. I've comically had a number of opponents locked under their own damping sphere. It's just can't cast 2 spells.
Okay, that's it.
I mean, I could go into more details, but the stories aren't more interesting than the gist. Attack with Terramander once again.
I find that is true with most stories, but
yeah, that's all in how you tell them. I don't got any way to really embellish those ones.
Well, here it is. That's a Shatterstorm from Allison Warfield here. Going to knock off all these artifacts from Syed if it resolves.
He'll respond with the Mishra's Bauble. That much makes sense. Take a look at the top card of Warfield's deck. Thing in the Ice down to 3 counters as well.
Now, Zan can just spend 2 mana here and gain 2 life. All the artifacts are dying anyway, and even though it makes the Thopters, they will also die to the Shatterstorm. It's a clean catch-all here, that Shatterstorm in this matchup. You have to think, though, there's a chance that was a bit premature on the Shatterstorm. Without Sword of the Meek on the battlefield, it wasn't really that threatening. And if Syed just casts an Ensnaring Bridge and a Welding Jar, it's going to be really hard for Warfield to get through it.
Well, this one's not bad either. Follow-up for Zan. Chalice of the Void on 1.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And now if Warfield actually transforms Thing in the Ice, that Terramander actually gets locked in her hand unless she finds some way to deal with that Chalice.
Yeah, and you can't Faithless Looting it away either.
Yeah.
It's a 1-mana spell, as is most of the deck. You see variable numbers of Snapcaster Mage in these Is It Phoenix deck. Warfield registered 1, it looks like.
Yep. Yeah, one Snapcaster gives her effectively a redundant copy of that Shatterstorm. So if she's able to find that Snapcaster Mage, she gives herself another hit to sweep everything up.
We'll see just what she can do from here. It's going to be Faithless Looting. Thing in the Ice of 2 counters. Syed's going to point out that Chalice of the Void trigger. Got to remember those ones.
Yeah, I think Allison's just going for an attack for 7 here on this Thing in the Ice. Just going to burn 2 Faithless Looting and a flashback. Oh.
It actually holds off on that part. Just an attack with Terramander.
Perhaps just wants to start attacking with Terramander and then kind of saving that Thing in the Ice for potential Thopter Foundry setup.
So Syed fell to 18. Remember, he gained 2 life off of the Foundry before. Now we'll go to his turn. Welding Jar is where he will start.
It looks like he has a War of Invention in hand, so he could potentially find that Ensnaring Bridge, but is lacking that 3rd mana. And Improvise doesn't allow you to get free colored sources, right? It's blue, 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 too?
You can tap blue things to Improvise. I think that's how Convoke works anyway.
It is how Convoke works. I don't think that is it. But here's a Battle at the Bridge. Now, this is an Improvise card that doesn't see a lot of play, but this one looks to be pretty good here. X is going to equal 4. That's going to kill the Thing in the Ice and gain 4 life.
Yeah, so the Thing in the Ice down. Syed up to 22.
Now, the cool thing about Battle at the Bridge is it is a one-of. You can't really tutor for it, but sometimes it's able to kill annoying creatures from the opponent's side that can stifle your various artifact-based interactions. And the fact that it also gains life, too, you can kind of pump a ton of your resources, or sorry, a ton of your mana and tapping all these 0-mana artifacts into it to gain you just an absurd amount of life to buy you time. Here it was just X equals 4, but it effectively gained a lot of life because it took out the potential 7 power attacker of that Thing in the Ice.
So for Warfield's turn, she adapted the Terramander, chunk for 5, Syed to 17, and here's Sword of the Meek for him.
Yeah, Sword of the Meek, but notably doesn't have the second Thopter Foundry just yet. He's going to need to draw a blue source to cast the War of Invention in hand, or he's going to need to draw Thopter Foundry proper. There it is.
Flooded Strand. That's their blue source.
Now I'm curious if Zan just goes for it now. Ooh. A Braid here from Allison Warfield, going to knock off that Chalice of the Void. But Welding Jar there to protect, potentially.
Yeah, he's thinking about it, and actually looks like a different response. So crack that Flooded Strand.
I learned the hard way just a week or so ago that Welding Jar can sacrifice to regenerate and doesn't require tapping.
Right.
So you can improvise with War of Invention and then sacrifice it. I was very mad. I was so mad.
I saw somebody you know, cast a word, tapping a welding jar. My first thought was to read the welding jar. So I was like, does that not tap? And it doesn't. And you see a whir for 3 here.
Now you can go get Ensnaring Bridge and then not even really care about the Abrade on the Chalice of the Void, or he could just go get Thopter Foundry and start making some 1/1s to protect from the Terramander. It's a pretty interesting spot. He's at a fairly low life total now.
And the motivation for whirring here before you think about the Chalice of the Void is that the Chalice on 1, whether you let it go or not, will protect you from Dispel for now.
Right.
And that is Ensnaring Bridge. He will go ahead and regenerate the Chalice of the Void as well.
Yeah, I like that because the Chalice of the Void prevents the Is a Phoenix deck from digging for those additional answers, finding another Abrade, finding the Snapcaster Mage for the Shatterstorm. And unless Warfield already has the Snapcaster Mage, it's going to be pretty hard to just naturally draw it before Zan's able to find either another War of Invention, crack that Inventor's Fair, or find another Thopter Foundry.
Warfield does have Snapcaster Mage in hand. The other 2 cards, Op, Spell Pierce, those are blanks, but the Snapcaster can be a big deal, notably on 5 mana right now, but still can use the Abrade in a pinch.
Yeah, I mean, if Warfield's able to find a land here in the next few draws, could potentially swing this game around her favor. It's really close right now, but I think Zan's starting to creep away. That 1 life a turn from the Inventor's Fair. And Allison just going for the jugular. Going to flash back that Abrade, killing that Ensnaring Bridge and attack for 5.
Yeah, she's feeling the pressure. Feels like she needs to get something going now. This also knocks Syed off of Metalcraft for that Inventor's Fair for now. Attack for 5, Syed to 7.
This is going to be a close one.
So he'll go Syed's way. He'll draw for turn. 2 cards in hand. Not too many options. And a tap of 3, that doesn't usually mean good things.
Yeah, and this is why I kind of wanted to wait on the Snapcaster Mage, because there are a lot of draws in Zan's deck that punish that Snap Abrade. It's aggressive, but I think it's just a little too aggressive in there. With the Snapcaster Mage on the follow-up, it's pretty rough.
One thing of note, something that will keep this game going until Syed can actually close with things like Thopter tokens, maybe boarded in more win conditions, is Warfield has more Thing in the Ices in her deck.
Yes.
And on a long enough timeline can use those to pick up the Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah. Now, though, Zan does have access to Inventor's Fair with that Metalcraft, so can end of turn fetch up either a way to protect Ensnaring Bridge, another Ensnaring Bridge, or try to close the game with a Thopter Foundry for that Sword of the Meek.
We'll see exactly what he does there. Warfield's not able to attack, just going to draw and pass.
Kind of interesting here. If Zan actually does pop Inventor's Fair. Oh, no, there's a Chalice of the Void in play for 1. I was thinking Zan has a tough decision, because if he cracks the Inventor's Fair and goes and gets a Thopter Foundry, there's a chance Warfield Surgical Extraction's the one that's already in the graveyard that died earlier to the Shatterstorm. But currently protected from that via the Chalice, so... I mean, there's a lot of options for Zan here. I'm not really sure what to do, and that's kind of the difficulty that comes with playing a deck with so many tutors and so many one-ofs.
He'll start by sacrificing Misting Rainforest, go down to 7 for that, finds Basic Island. Finally, the basic certainly suggests some desire to use that mana. There are 2 Watery Graves in the deck. Here's the non-Inventor's Fair lands being tapped. He's going to go ahead and use that to tutor up an artifact here.
All right, and he's going to try to close the game. He's going for Thopter Foundry. He has protection from Surgical via that Chalice of the Void. He's going to cast that and start making up to 4 Thopters a turn here pretty quick. And that could spell the end of the game and match here for Allison Warfield.
Yeah, and we saw him play Coy earlier in the match, position where he had to respect Spell Snare, or Spell Pierce. Surgical Extraction, that's the card I was trying to say.
Yeah.
But the Chalice of the Void protects you from all of that kind of stuff. Notably, he did not cast the Thopter Foundry, just Watery Grave tapped there. Warfield's going to draw and pass. Now Zan, with 3 mana up, is going to cast the Thopter Foundry.
So, interesting to note, Zan, I mean, these players don't know each other's deck list, right? Zan could be playing around the second Snapcaster Mage on the Shatterstorm. A lot of the decks that play Snapcaster Mage usually play 2, sometimes even 3. And with Warfield actually doing that aggressive Snapcaster Mage play earlier, Zan could have that in the back of his head of what if she draws a second Snapcaster Mage, maybe even a third Snapcaster Mage.
So now Warfield once again just drawing and passing. Syed's going to go to work with the Thopter Sword combo. Gains 2 life up to 9, 2 Thopters, leaving 1 mana untapped here.
That leads me to believe that he has a Swan Song in hand, and in case Chalice of the Void dies, he wants to just have a mana up for Swan Song just in case the worst of the worst happens.
Maybe second Abrade plus Surgical Extraction.
Yeah, something like that. Now, what you see quite often from decks that play Thopter Foundry and Sword of the Meek is that if they're trying to play around one of those anti-graveyard cards, they start at one point they start to main phase making the Thopters. That's not really a great option here because the Iza Phoenix deck does play Thing in the Ice, and main phasing that could get a lot of your creatures bounced. And he has protection from Surgical right now with Chalice of the Void, and he's just been regularly holding up a bunch of extra mana to make sure that he can sacrifice an additional artifact to bring it back and counter that Surgical Extraction effectively.
No attacks for Syed just yet. Warfield does still have that 5/5 Terramander. On her turn, Manamorphose into Pyromancer Ascension. That could maybe get something going.
Yeah, I mean, Allison Warfield has 2 copies of Faithlessly in the graveyard. She could start by flashing 1 back. It gets countered, but it puts a counter on the Pyromancer Ascension. And then another one of those instant sorceries from hand, as well as one from the graveyard. And there's a chance that, she's able to fight through the Chalice of the Void by just making copies of all the things she's casting, even though they're getting countered.
Yeah, copies are one way around Chalice. You counter the spell proper. Copied stuff still works, though, and you saw Warfield do what you mentioned, flashback Faithless Looting, first counter on the Ascension. Syed's going to make a bunch of Thopters. He's up to 14.
Yeah, and I think this is probably the time where he should just start shoving in with all of them. With only 1 blocker from Warfield's side, he can get in for about 6 points of damage here, and then still make 5 or 6 more Thopters. And that's the strength of the Thopter Sword combo.
It looks like 6 Thopters coming across, 1 blocked by the Terramander. Warfield will fall to 14. Mishra's Bauble also played. One of those situations where that's probably just going to hang out on the table for a while to keep the Ensnaring Bridge count low. Warfield to cast a Thought Scour. That'll get tagged by the Chalice.
Yeah, you're going to see her burn a few instant sorceries here just trying to put that second counter on the Pyromancer Ascension. Got a couple of 1-mana spells in hand, all get countered, but if she's able to turn on the Pyromancer Ascension, she'll start getting 1 copy through each time.
Not enough to get going just yet, just a tap Spire Bluff Canal. Syed's going to make 4 more Thopters, leaving up 1 mana here.
Yeah, again, playing around a Braid plus Surgical Extraction.
We might need more Nick Millers. A phrase that we often feel here on the SCG Tour.
That's true.
Ooh, yeah. Get those Jeremy Knowles.
Oh, man. Just put a die on him.
All right, yeah, so that is not a large Thopter. That is just many Thopters.
Yep, we'll do, okay, sure.
All right. Go back Syed's way. And he's at the point of the game where he's just getting aggressive with these Thopters. I think he has lethal next turn.
Yeah, definitely can't attack for the win this turn. Doesn't quite have enough power, but unless Warfield is able to play another Snapcaster Mage and flashback the Shatterstorm, I think this one is all but done.
Attack with 9 Thopters. Warfield blocks 1. 8 come across. She'll fall to 6. Now you see from that math, confirmed. Lethal next turn.
All right, well, I also did find another Thought Scour, so that could turn on the Pyromancer Ascension.
That is where she'll start. So Pyromancer Ascension online, 2 counters. Hand has some 1-mana cantrips, which are copied. 1 copy's the original's countered. She can get a Serum Visions from casting it.
Yeah, and it's a weird interaction. Chalice of the Void only counters cast spells, and the copies are put on the stack, not technically cast. So it's a weird caveat. It works the same way with Storm cards like Grape Shot or Tendrils of Agony.
Replicate, a big one.
Yep, and a lot of people use the card Shattering Spree with Replicate as an anti-graveyard card in the older formats. Vintage, Legacy, Modern sometimes. Shatterstorm's been picking up a little bit of popularity lately just because of how it interacts with Welding Jar.
Here's an Op. It's another cantrip for Warfield. A Braid was picked up, but I think that's too little too late here.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many Thopters coming across that it's just It's not impossible, but it is very unlikely that Warfield's able to really do much of anything here. She would need a chain of things like Manamorphose into Thing in the Ice into more things. But it starts with Manamorphose, and if she finds one, there it is. Okay, might get something going. We get to make like 2 red and 2 blue, something like that, and draw 2 cards. And if we find Thing in the Ice, we can play it, do some abrading, transforming.
It's like Faithless Looting was picked up.
Now, the Pyromancer Ascension with Manamorphose just starts to get disgusting.
Yeah, so that one's a 2-mana spell, so the actual card itself resolves. You get a copy, the copy makes mana. You just go up 2 mana and draw 2 cards.
Right. Lightning Bolt is the draw, but Zan had a very high life total thanks to that Thopter Foundry. And there's a Thing in the Ice. But now the question becomes, how many free spells do you have to potentially transform that? Is it enough, or is it too little too late for Warfield?
And at this point, she's used so much mana. There's still 2 floating, 1 land untapped. I believe still a land drop to go this turn.
I believe so too. I believe she has a mountain in hand. The problem is that Chalice of the Void was just too damaging early on. That even though she's getting to resolve like one of these instants at a time, it feels like it maybe is not enough. And that Shatterstorm or Thing in the Ice is going to be what helps her. But I think she needs at least 1 more Manamorphose to get there.
Arclight Phoenix and Spell Snare were resolved, discarded to that looting. But we're out of the range where you can really block with Arclight Phoenix out of the situation. There's just too many Thopters.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do have the potential to double Abrade, and that can kill like 2 tokens. The Arclight Phoenix and Terramander can each block a token. So that deals with 4 things. There's also Lightning Bolt in hand, so that potentially deals with 5 things. And that'll leave Zan with 5 activations and around 4 Thopters after that. And I think that is just a little bit shy of being able to stay in the game.
It's been a tough one. I mentioned at the start of the round, the War Prison deck very much picking up traction because of this matchup, because Izzet Phoenix is so popular. Izzet Phoenix also pretty good against the Azorius, the Jeskai decks, which tends to be a worse matchup for the Prison deck.
Right.
So Lightning Bolt's going to take down the untapped Thopter. Warfield brings back Arclight Phoenix, but still under the bridge.
Yeah, not only under the bridge, but just under duress from those Thopters. It's just a little too much.
Yeah, so right. Syed will advance to 9-1-1, Warfield to 8-11. Still a pretty good record for her. Both of these players kind of in a weird spot, but 9-1-1, a little bit better than 9-2, which is a reasonable spot to be at this point in day.